Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall.
105.9 FM.
At AM 630.
WMAL.
807 on WMAL. Brian Eamon, Brian Wilson with you. Fast and Furious is heating up, and there could be a contempt of Congress citation, a vote today in the House Oversight Committee. Not necessarily for all of Congress, but it could come in the committee which Darrell Issa heads. We'll get into all of that and much more. Katie Pavlich joins us now. She's news editor at townhall.com. Also, author of the New York Times bestseller Fast and Furious, Barack Obama's Bloodiest Scandal and its Shameless Coverup. Good morning, Katie. Thanks for coming on the show.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Well, since you wrote the book on Fast and Furious, because a lot of people hear Fast and Furious and they know some guns got into Mexico, and they know a border agent died, and they know that there's a big fight between Congress and the Attorney General. Can you just give us an overall synopsis of what Fast and Furious was and how we got to this point today?
Well, essentially, Fast and Furious was a program where the Department of Justice, through the use of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, deliberately placed 2,500 high-powered AK-47s and 50-caliber rifles into the hands of the Mexican drug cartels. Now, keep in mind, these are just the same cartels who recently dumped headless, handless, feetless bodies on the side of the road. They were giving guns to people who have no respect for human life. And two of those guns came, back north of the border and ended up at the crime scene of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry, who was murdered. And so that's what kind of kicked off this whole scandal here. And since the beginning, this administration has been engaged in a cover-up, and that's why we're here today with this contempt vote on Capitol Hill, because we've been, the Oversight Committee has been investigating this for more than a year now. They haven't had any answers. And the materials they have gotten from the Justice Department have been redacted, and it just seems like the Justice Department has a lot to hide.
Okay, so there's two things going on here. They want to know exactly what was going on with Fast and Furious, and then they want to know why, when they initially started asking questions about it, they were misled by the Department of Justice.
Right. They want to know who authorized this program and when they authorized it, and that's a question that they haven't been able to get out of the Attorney General. However, we have seen information about wiretap applications that were supposedly signed off on by Eric Holder's Assistant Attorney General, Lanny Brewer. 6 of them throughout 2010, even though Lanny Brewer claims he didn't know about Fast and Furious or these gun-walking tactics until after Brian Terry was killed in December of 2010. Eric Holder says that he, didn't know about Fast and Furious until May of 2011. Yet there's memos addressed directly to him in, July and August of 2010 about the program. And so you have that problem of the documentation not adding up to what the Justice Department is saying in terms of what they knew. And then specifically today, with this contempt hearing last night, Congressman Issa gave Eric Holder a last-ditch effort to try and, come forward with documentation about a February 4th, 2011 letter that was sent to Congress about, gun-walking tactics, and the Justice Department full-out denied that they were even using them. Whistleblowers had come forward and said, we're allowing guns to go to Mexico. Once Congress started asking the Department of Justice questions, they immediately sent a letter saying, we have no idea what's going on here. Of course we weren't walking guns into Mexico. So that letter was so full of falsehoods that it had to be withdrawn, which is an unprecedented thing. And so, the Oversight Committee has more than enough evidence. They've been at this for a long time now. This contempt vote is coming down today, not because of, a witch hunt or Oversight Committee being zealous. It's about the Attorney General not turning over information that was requested. They narrowed their search from 70,000 documents to 1,300 yesterday, and still Eric Holder didn't produce those 1,300, which he said he was going to, by the way.
Well, as I understand it, the end result of the meeting last night was Eric Holder said, I will give you the 1,300 documents and give you a full briefing if you agree in advance, before you even see the documents, that you will end this probe.
Right. He essentially went into this meeting and said, I'm not going to give you anything, despite, you saying you needed the documents you turned over this morning. And if I do just, even agree to give you these documents and to even brief you on them, I want you to end your investigation. And so that's something that, Congressman Issa isn't willing to accept, especially with the pattern of behavior coming from the Justice Department on this issue. And, Eric Holder's paying the price for it today. And I've said for a couple of weeks now, that Eric Holder's really pinned himself in a tough place in a corner, because if he complies with the subpoena that was issued to him in October 2011, more than 6 months ago, I guarantee you the documentation he hands over will contradict what he said under oath in front of Congress, which is not going to help him should they decide to pursue perjury charges, for example. However, politically, this is bad for the Obama administration, because he would be the only, the second Attorney General in history to be held in contempt of Congress. And he even, Eric Holder even admitted in testimony about a week and a half ago that he was in contact with David Axelrod at the White House in terms of how they were going to message and respond to Congress and press inquiries about Fast and Furious. So clearly this is something that the administration is concerned about. And Eric Holder has really put himself in a spot where he doesn't really have a good way out.
Well, do you get a sense of why there is the stonewalling? Is Holder trying to protect somebody? Is he trying to protect the Justice Department in general? Is he trying to protect himself? Perhaps is he trying to protect the president?
All of the above. In my book, I go into detail about why this program was implemented in the first place. And people keep asking that question: why is there so much stonewalling? Why won't they just hand over the 1,300 documents? And the fact is that the documentation shows, the emails show, the interviews show, the whistleblowers say that this was never a program intended to track weapons. Out of 2,500 guns, they put 2 GPS recording devices in them. The emails show that this was a program all about regulating the gun dealers and blaming them for violence in Mexico, even though behind closed doors they were telling them to sell to these cartels. And so when you look at that, and not to mention Eric Holder is the one who's changed his testimony and who has defended his top senior officials in his Justice Department over and over again, despite the evidence showing that they were involved in this. And so when you look at the evidence and you realize there was a very sinister agenda behind this program that got hundreds of people killed, that's going to be a major problem for the Attorney General and the administration. Not to mention the White House has their fingerprints all over this. National security advisors are getting emails about this program, including President Obama's senior White House national security advisor to Latin America. Yet, President Obama claims to know nothing about it.
And Mexico was never informed about this, right?
Mexico wasn't informed. ATF agents working in Mexico were not informed of this. This was something that they tried to, implement under the radar. And one thing that, that's been interesting to see is the media has been calling this botched, right? This is a mistake. This is a botched operation. So there's nothing that drives whistleblowers who put everything on the line to come forward about this operation crazier than when they hear that. They say, we were told to give these guys weapons. Thousands of weapons that just somehow end up in the wrong hands. We were told to do this. These were deliberate actions taken by this department, and this is in no way a mistake. All
right, very quickly, contempt citation in committee, it then goes to the House, and then the Justice Department would investigate Eric Holder?
Exactly. So it would go to the U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C. Now, if he decides not to take any action against the Attorney General, which he probably won't because he owes his career to Eric Holder, the Oversight Committee can then come back with a civil suit against Eric Holder for contempt. So there are still options on the table here.
All right. Listen, fascinating, great sort of encapsulation of a very complicated story. Katie, thank you so much for